Coming up this weekend at middleweight, we have a big time and interesting fight between Ugly Man Joseph Holmes, yes, that's his nickname, taking on the Night Wolf. Jamie Pickett. And when I look at this fight, it is the trickiest fight to try and pick correctly on this entire card. Stay away from it. I'm dead serious. Stay away from this fight because this really gets weird when you actually look at the two styles that these guys have. And I was supposed to start this video off by saying, Jonathan Pati, if you're out there, don't watch this video. I don't have anything nice to say. Don't watch this video. Because for both of these guys, Jonathan Pati, unfortunately for him, was their springboard into the UFC. If you look at it for Joseph Holmes, he fought on Contender Series this past year. He gets a win over Shante Barnes, finishes him in the second round. He fights Jonathan Pati with Fury FC. It was a looking for a fight episode. Dana White was in attendance. He finishes Pati and knocks him out cold. Pati, kind of was begrudging about the stoppage, but it was a good stoppage. For Jamie Pickett, he throws his 1,000-punch combo against Jonathan Pati over on Contender Series. The referee stops it. Then he comes into the UFC, fights Stefan Chukwe, and gets completely out-volumed and outstruck in that fight. He fights Jordan Wright. He gets knocked out. And then his last time out, he fights Laureano Staropoli. And I think I was the only person to pick Jamie Pickett to win that fight. Let's just pat myself on the back right there. But Laureano Staropoli came into the UFC looking really good, and he left with blonde hair and did not look good. So for Staropoli, I don't know if that's more of a conversation about him than it is about Pickett, but I will say Pickett brought a complete game to that fight, and I at least like to see that out of him, and I think that could pay out in this fight against Holmes, because for Pickett, he can grapple a little bit. He can strike with some good volume. As long as he's not getting backed up completely straight back, he has pretty decent fights. Now, he has struggled in those areas. If he gets into a firefight with somebody with big-time power like Jordan Wright, a kill-or-be-killed type fight, Jamie Pickett might not win in those exchanges. But he's taking on a Joseph Holmes, who I think is a very interesting prospect. I mean, the guy was 7-0 as an amateur in MMA, 7-1 so far as a pro, and his only loss was to Jordan Newman, a 2017-18 NCAA Division III champion. He was wrestler of the year in his division. Like,
impressive.
You lose that fight over with Bellator, and since then win 7 more. It really is tough, though, when you really break it down for Joseph Holmes, what kind of a fighter we're going to get in the UFC, because he seems like a guy that just kind of takes his time, and that can really cost you at middleweight in the UFC.
It can, but I don't know if it's going to cost him against Jamie Pickett. And I guess this is just a larger point about this fight. Are we going to set, all-time low volume number? Is this going to be the new Tyron Woodley versus Damian Maia? Because
or Lewis versus Ngannou?
It could be, because the thing with Pickett, and I think you set it up in the right way, he does have a very complete game, but it always depends on what his opponent brings to him, and then we see what version of Jamie Pickett we're going to get. Because, oddly enough, he's kind of a defensively oriented fighter, but not in the way of, an Alexander Volkanovski, who's I'm always putting pressure on you, and I'm making you react, reading your reads, and then making you pay for it. That's high-level stuff. With Jamie Pickett, it's okay, I'm going to keep my hands up, I'm going to defend your takedowns. If the opening's there, I'll start to unload a little bit, but it was very interesting in that Jordan Wright fight. It's almost like he kind of learned his lesson a little bit to where, okay, I'm going to be more hesitant once I do let my hands go, but that's a double-edged sword, because that's kind of when Jamie Pickett is at his best. When he is getting into some of those exchanges, then clinching up and making a mixed martial arts fight, that's when he can be a very successful fighter. But again, it's never Jamie Pickett going out there and winning the fight. A lot of the time, it's, okay, his opponent's getting tired, or his opponent makes a big mistake, and then he's the one capitalizing on it. But if you go back and watch a lot of Joseph Holmes tape, this will still just be an open conversation, I guess, at this point. It was one of the weirder dives I've ever had on a UFC newcomer, because there's a lot of positives to look at when you do look at the tape, but when you really do the deep dive on his opponents and what his opponent's positives and weaknesses are, he's kind of in the same boat himself. He rarely goes out there and gets the win over his opponent. He's not somebody who's going to go out there, hit you with a right hand, take your back, and choke you out. It's his opponent's getting tired. His opponent makes a boneheaded decision and he capitalizes on it. It's a very strange route to get into the UFC, because, we watch a lot of baseball, right? If you want to get to the major leagues, you have to be better than about 1 million other people who play your position, and you got to work every single day, making no money at all, for years to hopefully get to your dream one day. For Joseph Holmes, he just kind of beat a lot of guys who weren't that impressive, and now he's finally in the big show.
I like what Joseph Holmes brings in. I mean, they call him a submission fighter, and he's very good with his trip takedowns. He's really able to kind of position his leg in such a way that he can kind of make the mistake. And I really think positionally oriented, especially up against the cage. And when he throws that jab out there, this is the thing with both of these guys. They're two of the longer middleweights you're going to find. Like in that Israel Adesanya type category, Alex Pereira, another one of those guys. Because again, 6'4" and 6'2", 80 inches plus of reach for both of these guys. But for Holmes, yeah, it was really weird. I listened to an interview that he did with Ryan Gerald, from Maine, friend of the show, and All Access MMA, and I really was, I read the headline and it was, I will finish Pickett in the first round. Okay, well, I like to see that, good on ya. And then I listened to it, and it was kind of a little odd. He trains at SFS MMA in the Dallas area. He's getting work in with Glory MMA and Fitness. You heard about that on his Dana White Contender Series fight. Laura Sanko spoke to it. Julian Marquez spoke to it. And here's the quotable from Julian Marquez on the man himself, Joseph Holmes. And I'm going to read it out. He has a powerful right hand. He listens very well, and he's not going to stop until he makes it.
Oh, no, Craig. They brought up personality as his second best strength.
He listens very well. And so that was a little weird. In the interview that he did with Ryan, he also said that he was 206 pounds in late December before Christmas. All right, that's not that bad. You're going to cut about 20 pounds. But then he also responded to a question saying, probably the heavier I normally am. But listen, 195 pounds, all I have to do is cut the water, and then it's another 10 pounds and I'm there. So I'm not totally worried about the short notice nature of this fight because it is short notice for Joseph Holmes. It was originally supposed to be two-time Contender Series appearer, I guess, Caio Borrello. But when I look at this fight, yeah, it was just weird, the tape study that I did. The Ryan Leninger fight, again, it's a lot of jabs, then 1-2 right cross, knee up the middle, Leninger falls down, we finish him. Michael Tover, 0-1, first round rear naked.
Diggs was not impressive whatsoever.
Dwayne Diggs, who was 3-2, second round rear naked choke. And then Holmes ends up on Contender Series, in October. He fights Shante Barnes, who was 34 at 6-1-1. Shante Barnes, to get into Dana White's Contender Series, beat Jay Ellis. Yeah, that Jay Ellis. He beat Jay Ellis.
Who hasn't?
Gerald Mearshart.
That's true.
So he beat Jay Ellis, the guy who has 100 pro losses on his record. And then he beat another fellow that was 13-17 to get the shot. Joseph Holmes was a minus 435 favorite in that fight. Doesn't get the contract, even though he finished him in the second round. And then he fights Donovan Patti, finishes him, ends up in the UFC on short notice. So I like it, but very low volume. He talked about it in the interview with Ryan, the fact that when he goes to Glory Fitness and MMA, the things that he's working on, timing, footwork, and upping his volume, I love to hear that. At least, he's cognizant. Those are things that he's going to work on, and I think you're going to start to see that in some of his fights because his jab to right cross is lethal, and it's down the pipe. His speed's not the speediest. His power is there. And he's a submission fighter. So things that you like to see. But I look at the odds for this one. And Holmes open to minus 175. He's minus 156 right now. Pickett's open to plus 150. He's plus 130. The Tapology votes, I wouldn't be surprised if Holmes was a big fan favorite. 1,160 total votes, 80% Holmes, 25% by submission, 57% by knockout. For the 20% that have Pickett, 48% by decision, 37% by knockout. Matt, I think this is going to be one of the worst fights on this card.
I got a nickel in my hand. If it goes heads, I pick Pickett. If it goes tails, I pick Holmes.
Now, again, you're joking about this, but honest to goodness, for everybody out there, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, normally, the job of us at Fight Night Picks, we watch all the tape, we write down all the notes, I watch interviews, I do the Instagram, and then I boil it down into something you can enjoy. I implore you, go watch their fights for this one and come up with your own assumptions and comments. I want to hear from people down below more than any other fight on this card. I want to hear from you on this one. I think Joseph Holmes has a great MMA pedigree, whether it's amateur, whether it's pro. Maybe the level of competition isn't quite there, but I like what I see. Tall, rangy fighter at middleweight. I think he's got the skills. It's just going to take a little bit of refining, and I think Glory MMA is a great place to train to try and add to that skill set. For Jamie Pickett, he gets knocked out, but he has decent volume and decent wrestling. So it's going to come down to those two things. Can Holmes bring his A game? Can Pickett not get knocked out?
I don't like the pick. I guess I'll ask you this first. Did Joseph Holmes give himself that nickname, or did someone in the gym give it to him?
I have no idea.
I feel like they definitely threw hands if someone else gave it to him. That's not something you can just walk up.
He has a nice mustache.
He does. No, I like Jimmy Pickett in this matchup. Now, that might be against my best judgment, but I think he can defend some of those trip takedowns that Joseph Holmes does use, because that was a big thing that I noticed in the tape study too, is that Holmes likes a lot of his takedowns from the clinch position, and Jimmy Pickett can at least stay sound defensively in some of those clinch exchanges. Now, is this going to look like a great fight? No, I don't think it will, and I do think this could be one of those fights where one big action per round could probably get the win. Like, if Holmes is able to get one takedown with like 50 seconds left in the round, I know that's not often scored all that heavily, like you need a lot of control time, you do need to work, but this could be one of those fights where, oh, a quick takedown at the end of the round, well, that was the biggest action, so we'll just score it to him. But I do think Pickett can at least be the more steady fighter throughout this fight. Again, I might look like an idiot come Saturday, but you could tell me that this fight goes any which way, and I could believe it.
I like Pickett, especially when he's backed up behind that black line that you see in the octagon. A lot of fighters aren't very good there. Pickett's one of those guys that it just depends on the matchup, but he can be, especially, he's very sound with his body weight. I know that sounds very meta. I know I might sound a little bit like fellow Canadian Robin Black, but in this fight, I love the 1-2 out of Joseph Holmes, and I think it's going to pay out to great effect, and I think he's got very, very sneaky power for this division if he's able to hurt Pickett on the feet, finish the fight down on the mat. So I'm going to go with the prospect in this fight in Joseph Holmes, ugly man. Matt's got Jamie Pickett, but if you feel confident about this fight, I want to hear from you down below. We want a big-time year in 2022, and we need to hear from you. It is a big-time card coming up this weekend, headlined by Calvin Kattar and Giga Chikadze. You're not going to want to miss. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.